Well, friends, we've made it. We've made it till the end of our Saturday gathering. Thank you for those of you that have joined us across the day. You've been tweeting along. We've had tons of fun reading your tweets. Thank you to all of you for making us a part of your Saturday. Really, I feel so moved watching the sessions across the day. I many times I tweeted out some pictures, would try to have like all five or four or five, six windows all open at the same time, because I felt an incredible sense of fear of missing out, FOMO, and I felt so moved to see such incredible people that I feel inspired by, sharing their energy, sharing their passion, and sharing their ideas with all of you. And to even add to that, then having all of you on Twitter sharing ideas back and with each other, it really is what we believe in here at the Educator Collaborative, and really what I think makes this particular profession such an incredible one. So thank you. Thank you for your energy today. Thank you for all of your great ideas and your great thinking. So as we're coming towards the end of our day, just before we introduce our closing speakers here, I'd like to remind you just one final time, if you enjoyed what you saw today, if it inspired you, if it felt meaningful to you, if you felt thankful for it, please consider donating to our adopted charity for today, the Book Club Foundation. This entire event is free. Everyone volunteers their time. And so we hope that us giving to you will inspire you to give to others as well. And the Book Club Foundation feels incredibly deserving of that. So if you haven't had a chance yet, check out their website, bookclubfoundation.org, and there you can read more about their mission and opportunities to share. I think they have on their website that even like $50 can buy a child's reading for a year. So thank you. Thank you for considering that and for paying it forward in that way. It's absolutely essential that I thank the people that really, truly are the universe today. These names in front of you are our tech team. Everyone has volunteered their time. All of these people are educators and district leaders and have all of the thousands of things that you have going on in your life at the start of the year. They've had those things going on in their lives too. And then on top of that, they have also been trying to help get all of this set up and running. So Brian, Ryan, Carolyn, Camilla, Christine, Lauren, Amy, Krista, thank you, thank you, thank you. All the members of the tech team not only ran today's sessions, but they also presented, they worked with all of the presenters in practice sessions before today, because this is a different kind of a way to present, making the technology work, showing your slides the right way, moving the camera around. So all of those people not only gave time today, but they've given hours of their time beforehand. And really, truly, they are the rock that today stands on. So I just want to thank all of you, tech team. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The other thing, just to say, and don't be too jealous, but I think I mentioned it earlier, we have a tech team Voxer stream that runs across the entire day. And so hopefully you didn't see much of this, if any of it, but when issues came up, we helped each other out. But I do have to, and sorry to make this public, tech team, I do also have to say, though, what I love so much is that the tech team not only is working hard to make sure everything runs well today, but they also are so grateful to all of the presenters for presenting, because across the day people were like, wow, Jeff Anderson, he's amazing. Wow, Jen's sharing such incredible stuff. Like the tech team's back here making sure everything works, but then also just enjoying the work that's happening too. So a huge, huge, humongous, tremendous thanks to all of my tech friends. Thank you for giving of your time. Thank you for the headaches that technology can sometimes give, and just thank you for being incredibly amazing with that too. If you are coming in late today, or there's so many of you who are viewing today live from overseas, Just know that all of these sessions are archived. So the closing will be live in just a few minutes, but then everything is going to live on our website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com, and it'll live there until the spring when our next gathering comes. Then all of it will, well, very shortly, all of it will move to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/theedcollab. We'd love if you'd follow us there, and you'll find all of the archives from this gathering, as well as the last gathering and the one before that, as well as some other videos from other events that we've done that are on there too. So just one more congratulations and an announcement for you. I mentioned this earlier today. Kristen Jones is the winner of our free study series subscription. The study series is kind of like the gathering, only more in depth. You're able to chat right along live with the presenters, and we've spread them out across the entire school year. So sometimes it's 2 or 3 a month. Each of them are about 90 minutes long with incredible speakers like Brenda Overturf will be talking about vocabulary with some of her co-authors. Jen Saravallo will be back for an in-depth session on reading strategies. Mary Capolini is celebrating the 10th year of her work with English language learners in her book, Balancing Reading and Language Learning, and she'll be presenting. All the members of our team are presenting. We'll end the year with Amy Ludwig Vanderwater and lots of other amazing sessions. If you visit theeducatorcollaborative.com/study series, you can see the full list there. So Kristen entered one of our drawings, and she won the free subscription, and we'd like to give you a chance to do this as well. So if any time between now and tomorrow at midnight, you take a look at our virtual think tanks offerings, you can see year-long sessions where you get to work in a small group with me or Heather Rocco or Kristi Mraz or all the great people from our group. If you take a look at that and then tweet about it using #TheEdCollabThinkTanks, you'll be entered into a sweepstakes for one more subscription that we'll give away for free to the study series, and that you can use for yourself or you can give away to others. And I should say, official rules are available on our website. Okay. Then lastly, mark your calendars. April 2nd, 2016 is our Spring the EdCollab gathering, and we are delighted to have Keynote, dual Keynote by Harvey Smokey Daniels and Sarah Ahmed. They're authors of Upstandards, and many of you know them for all their other incredible work. They will be keynoting that event. And April 2nd, our spring gatherings, we really build them around collaboration. So we especially are excited to have 2 people that work so well together and work so often together to be talking together, which leads me to an invitation. Perhaps you should also be at the April 2nd EdCollab gathering. So at 4 o'clock today, on our website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com, 4 o'clock today is directly after the closing. If you go to gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com, you'll see, it's already there now, you'll see up on the top there's 2 links. They actually both go to the same page, but there's a link for submitting a proposal, and there's a link for applying to be a member of our tech team. We would love to have you. In fact, most of the sessions that happened today were people that proposed a session and then they joined. So right after the closing, you can head over to that and you can submit a proposal, or you can provide an application to perhaps join our tech team. Both of them are, I think, great opportunities to share back with our community. With the tech team, you get to make jokes with me on Voxer. I will also say that with the tech team, what we're really looking for, and we've always been lucky to have this, the tech team are people who feel comfortable with technology, but you don't have to know everything. You just have a willingness to learn and are great working under some pressure. So you're a problem solver. What we can provide for you then is an opportunity to learn a lot of what makes sessions like this tick, so that you have some skills that you can bring to other events that you're doing with your district or anywhere. So we strongly invite you and urge you to check that out. Both of those will stay live until, I want to remember, December 15th, I think, is the final closing for both of those. So just as a reminder, in fact, I'll put it up on the screen just one last time. Starting right after the closing sessions today, head over to gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com. You'll find the links to propose a session or to apply to join our tech team, and we would love, 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 love to have you. In fact, I might do what I did this time and approve too many sessions. Sorry, tech team. It was hard to say no. Okay, so now the main event. It is my distinct pleasure to invite or introduce to you or reintroduce to you two of my dear friends in education, Kristi Mraz and Hertz. They are the authors of this brand new book, Mindset for Learning, Teaching the Traits of Joyful Independent Growth. And I have to say, whenever I'm in their classrooms, whenever I'm around their kids, it's the kind of place that I think every child deserves to be. Christine and Kristi have this deep belief that every kid from kindergarten all the way up, every kid has the ability to be amazing. And they are willing to challenge their own beliefs about teaching and learning, their own beliefs about classroom environment, their own beliefs about the structures that many of us become used to in our schools. They're willing to challenge those and think through those all through the lens of kids. And I feel so happy, so glad that their incredible work that happens every day in their classrooms, they've been able to put into a terrific book that not only is super, super practical, but incredibly inspiring. And by the way, these are two very funny people, and there's a lot of puns and jokes in here too. So it's an incredibly great read, but it also is one that will wholeheartedly make you think differently about your instruction. So without further ado, hi Kristi, hi Christine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Chris. And I just want to say before we get started on our things that Chris Lehman is absolutely visionary in what he believes is possible for the world of education and for teaching, and he has brought together an incredible community of people. Both Christine and I were talking about all the things we were going to watch and rewatch that happened today, the sessions we didn't get to see, what we're planning to bring back to our classrooms. So we just want to say thank you for creating this forum. It's been absolutely amazing. And we also want to thank all of you who are tuning in to spend the last few moments with us. So why are we here? We are here because we think the world can be a better and more just place, and we think you are here because you believe the same thing. Sometimes we can all feel powerless in the face of mandates and benchmarks and injustice and the fear that permeates not just the world of ed, but the world at large. But here's the secret. We're powerful because we are teachers. The revolution won't be televised. The revolution for change will happen in our classrooms today and tomorrow and the day after that, until one day a boy can make a clock and just be a boy making a clock. This closing is our call to arms, our rally cry that we make better classrooms today so that we can make a better world tomorrow. We invite you to stop and to think and reflect. If the rules in your classroom became the rules of the world, would you want to live there? Would it be a world of engaged and active citizenship, or would it be of compliance? If the community in your classroom, in your school, were to become the community of the world, what do you see? What is the world we would inhabit? Would it be a place where mistakes, though sometimes painful, are the birthplace of innovation? Or would it be a place where anything less than perfection is shameful? We make tomorrow by how we live and teach today. We embrace curiosity and challenge. We support community. We believe in our children and the possibility that they can be better than we ever hope to be. And we do it in our classrooms every single day, even when we've lost our patience and our sanity and time feels so precious. We make time, not just to create a mindset for learning, but a mindset for change and hope and equality. That is our mission, and that is why we are here. We keep our hope, we keep our joy, we keep our vision for children, and we don't start the change by accepting things as how they've always been. We ignite it through our unwavering belief in how things can be. We start with our community, We reflect on our environments. We build mindsets for learning through self-talk and storytelling, goal setting and reflection. We make change every single day, or at least we can. We start by thinking about building community and not just compliance. And that's where we're going to start with our first slide. In a moment. Okay, so our world is one that should be built around community and not just compliance. And so part of building a mindset for learning, part of building a bigger and better world is to start in your classroom. See your classroom as the world to come every single day. So we offer some tips in doing that. First and foremost, it's about co-constructing a community through conversation. It's not these are the rules and you follow them. It's how do we want to live together? We have to be thoughtful about how we're communicating to children, their role in the classroom, and what that means for their role in the world. And so part of that is not just saying follow these rules, but how do we work and live together? We're going to think about teaching self-regulation strategies in our communities. Part of being in a community is understanding that we have to live and work together and we have to regulate ourselves. Self-regulation strategies are really powerful for kids, and rather than hold kids, rather than find ourselves feeling frustrated that kids do not yet have self-control, it's our job to teach it. And so thinking about how we can introduce the ideas of understanding how you're feeling, how you can take steps to control your feelings and to get yourself back to a place where you're ready to be with others. We also think about how we facilitate ownership of materials, so we don't just see it as my classroom that kids come into, but it's about our classroom. The space we spend to get in here belongs to all of us. We care for it together. It belongs to every single one here. We also make room for mistakes. When you're thinking about community over compliance, we have to remember that all learning has a zone of proximal development, including learning how to be in a community. Mistakes aren't to be punished. Mistakes are ways to start, places to start instruction, including in being in the world. So we take a toy without asking. So we push our way to the front of the line. That doesn't mean anything beyond that. That's the best way you know how to be in the community, and we want to help you learn from that moment. We want to help you learn to be part of all of us. And last but not least, we want to remember that we teach children. And so for just a moment, we're going to think about what it means to really be teaching children. So a few things that sometimes we lose sight of is we hang so much onto the academics in our classroom, we forget that children are valuable in their own right. It's not about what they're going to learn or what they're going to be next. It's who they are now that we celebrate and we value, and that's how we build communities that facilitate a mindset for learning. So part of that is that we think, how do kids live through the natural rhythms of their day, and how do we support that? There is a lot of research that talks about how willpower is finite. What's interesting about willpower being finite is you experience it in your own day. Sometimes we like to make that day where everything's going to be awful for ourselves. We're going to go to the dentist, then we're going to go to the doctor, and then we're going to go grocery shopping, and then we're going to have to make that phone call we didn't want to have to make. And we find midway through the day we've just completely given up. We've given up on all our willpower. And that's a true thing. Willpower we only have a finite supply of willpower, and it gets drained. So there's two things, according to the studies, that help your willpower reboot. One is sugar, and the other is unstructured time. And so as much as we all might like some sugar, one of the things that we want to think about is how in our classrooms we're building time for kids to work really hard at something, but also to reboot. If we're going from high willpower task to high willpower task to high willpower task to high willpower task, we're draining our kids' ability to really give their best to things. And so in thinking about how we build communities of just right risk and how we create mindsets for learning, we create the conditions in which you really can put effort in. If you're exhausted, no amount of effort is going to show you that you can overcome pretty much every challenge with work. So we think about how our day reflects periods of structured and unstructured time, in that we can help kids be more successful across the day that way. Maybe it means 45 minutes we spend in reading and writing workshop, and then we have 15 minutes where you just get to play. So thinking in terms of how we're working with the natural rhythm of kids, we're thinking, how are we asking them to use their willpower, and then when are we letting them reboot their willpower? And that's one way that we can help to build a mindset for learning with our community expectations. A second thing to keep in mind when thinking about children is that they should be moving. There's an incredible book called A Moving Child is a Learning Child by Gil Connell and Cheryl McCarthy, and they say that the brain prioritizes from the bottom up, which means that first things first, the brain wants to know it's got food, it wants to know that it's going to get to sleep, that it's going to get to eat, that it can go to the bathroom, and that it can move. The brain is prioritizing survival above things like the alphabet or the motivation of Piggy. What's really happening to the brain is it's saying what's critical right now, and when we deny children the chance to be children, to move, to get drinks of water, to go to the bathroom, to have a snack, what we're creating is a system that's unsustainable for them, where they can't learn because their basic needs are not being met. So reflecting in our classroom, how are we making sure that kids are moving and drinking and going to the bathroom when they need to? So that they're more successful across the day. We are teaching children, and we have to keep that in mind. One of the last things to think about in terms of the fact that we are teaching children is that in the book A Moving Child is a Learning Child, they talk about how sitting still is the highest form of the balance system. In order to learn how to balance, you need to move. Think about your day. Think about how often you start to feel frustrated because kids don't feel like they're sitting still, and ask yourself, why? Why does it matter if kids are sitting still right now, right? So thinking about creating an environment that's right for children, where they can put effort, where they can be optimistic, where they can be resilient, we have to think, did we make a classroom for children or a classroom for children-shaped robots? Chances are, if we let kids move, if we let kids go to the bathroom, if we think about how sometimes you need to play and move and scream at the top of your lungs, we are going to be creating systems where kids feel powerful and they don't just feel like they have to comply with whatever is happening, that they are in charge of themselves and their learning, because they can be. So when we're thinking about creating a community that's going to build a better world tomorrow, we're not just thinking about what fits the natural flow of children, but also what children might need to learn as we mentor them into the world of being humans. And so I'm going to add another slide in a really awkward way. Stay with me. Thanks. There we go. We're thinking, if you're going to exist in the world, what are things you need to know? What are ways you need to talk? What are things that are going to empower you to have a mindset for learning and a mindset for change? One is to help kids start to understand feelings. Empathy is a critical part of our future world and our current world. And so helping kids think about the ways they're feeling and the way and how those feelings might affect what they want or need is a way to help construct community together and understandings together. Talking through problems as having degrees of issues. That problems can be glitches, they can be bummers or disasters, right? That we teach kids that not every problem is the same size, and different size problems have different results. A glitch is something you can take care of easily. A disaster, only President Obama can take care of a disaster. But oftentimes we have bummers in our classroom. And how are we teaching children? How are we teaching children to solve problems proactively? How are we teaching them to talk to each other as though they're human beings? And are we talking to children like they're human beings, right? So thinking, the slide on the left comes from Catherine Case, a special educator, and the slide on the right comes from Katie Lee, an amazing kindergarten teacher. How do we create this in our classrooms that we have a community of talk and understanding? Mistakes are the start of learning. Um, to the left is just another idea. Is of how we can introduce sizes of problems and how it can be solved on the left, but also that we're teaching self-control. That's something that kids can take on for themselves, that we don't control children because we don't want a world where we are controlled. We want to teach children how to have self-control so they can be in a world where they are regulated and make change. Are our classrooms mini police states? I hope not. That would be horrifying. So how do we create community by helping kids feel empowered and in charge of their own behavior? Part of it is teaching self-control and things and strategies to assist in that, which we're going to do when Christine starts talking. Just a little preview. Okay, so next up is thinking about just our environments and how are they flexible and supportive of different kinds of kids. So thinking about your classroom environment, and again, thinking about the fact you're teaching children, one of the things you want to keep in mind is that to create a mindset of learning, you have to have favorable conditions. It is incredibly challenging to become a learner in a place where you are afraid or you don't belong. Sometimes people talk about grit, and Christine will say a little bit more about it. But the thing where all of this starts before any of it begins is in our classrooms. Do we create safe, accepting environments through how we talk about community, through how we build our classroom for children? So things to reflect about as you're thinking about your own classroom and whether or not it is a place where we are building a world of tomorrow is it one size fits all? We are not all the same people, and we don't want children who believe that you have to comply to a certain way of living in the world. So does your classroom have ways in which group sizes can vary? Some kids like to learn together, and some kids like to be on their own. Noise levels. Some kids like it noisy, some kids like it quiet. Personal comfort. Do you like to sit on the floor? Do you like to stand and work? So when you're looking at your classroom environment, you're looking at the critical eyes of, does a child see themselves belonging here? Do they see a space where they can be successful? If I'm a child that falls out of a chair all the time, why can't I sit on the floor? Building a mindset of learning, the growth of a mindset of learning starts in our soil, and our soil is our classrooms and how we view it. And we should view them first and foremost as for children. So I'm going to pass this off to Christine, who is going to be talking a bit about once we have the soil in place to build communities of change, how we then foster the mindsets of learning and change that are so powerful.
Thanks, Kristi. I was busy tweeting away, but I'm ready to pick up now. A couple things that are really good news in our effort to make these better classrooms for today and a better world for tomorrow. Sometimes it can feel like things are working against us, but just know that there are some pieces of good news. The first is this: your mindset as a teacher and your students' mindset really matters. The way you and they view your world, your place in it, how you confront problems, and how you can affect change are directly connected to your mindset and to your success in the world. So 3 studies recently that really speak to this. The first is from the American Journal on Public Health, and they found that students and children in kindergarten who had more pro-social skills, like listening or being able to share, were doing better as adults than children who lacked these pro-social skills. But even more important than that is the fact that these pro-social skills aren't just innate. You're not born with them or without them. They are actually can be taught and they can be learned, which is really exciting. The next thing that we found is that as the children grow up, these children are able to take on challenges with more zeal and confront the world that we live in and the world that needs some work. Additionally, Carol Dweck, whose work on mindset was really the springboard for a lot of our work, found us in a study that the praise you give children and the mindsets, her work is grounded in the idea that there's a fixed mindset, which is that intelligence is innate, or a growth mindset where you can actually grow and change as you develop and apply effort. She found that if you have a growth mindset, you are actually able to take on risks and you're actually able to do better than people or children with a fixed mindset. So one little study that shared this. Her researchers stopped students halfway through a test. And to some students, they said, oh, you're so smart. You're doing so well. And those students kind of grew a little bit in their fixed mindset and thought, yeah, I am smart. I am doing well. But as the problems got harder, they became less confident in their ability, and they actually did worse. As opposed to the students who the researchers told were working really hard and who were putting in a lot of effort, those students actually faced more challenging problems and dug in and tried and took risks and actually did better in the end. So that one little shift, those tiny things, can really affect our mindsets and our classroom cultures. And then the last study that's come out recently that we've been hearing more and more about is Angela Duckworth's work on grit. So Angela Duckworth defines grit as staying with one path and choosing to show up again and again and again. And as teachers, we know a lot about grit and about choosing one path and choosing to show up again and again and again. But there's something missing with grit. Somebody recently said that grit is neutral. And you can either have grit for really bad and evil means, or you can have grit for really good and noble and passionate means. So grit alone is one thing, but grit combined with passion and creativity and a deep conviction to make a positive impact on the world is when it becomes truly powerful. So we have these ideas about what we as teachers want to see in our students and develop and grow, and what we want to create in our classrooms and the world for tomorrow. And then we go into the classroom on Monday morning and we start our year and we think, how do we start? And so one way that Kristi and I found that we could start is by introducing 5 stances, or 5 traits. And those 5 traits are, one moment please, the suspense. Those 5 traits are empathy, optimism, persistence, resilience, flexibility. And so I'll just speak now a little bit to each of those traits, but I want to start with empathy, which Kristi has mentioned before. And this ties right back into the grit work and our grit thinking as well. And that's this: without empathy and without an awareness and reflection on yourself and the world around you, then all of this work and growth and progress is kind of for naught. Without empathy, you're not reflecting on making positive change in the world, about making the world a better place. You're just kind of trudging forward. We say in our book, and we've said it again and again, that a whole lot of really not so good people have had plenty of optimism and persistence and resilience and flexibility, and they've done some change and made some change in the world, but not necessarily the best change. So without going into too many details about the negative, let's focus now on the positive. So if we think about these 5 traits and bringing them into our classroom, what exactly does that look like? So the first is empathy. Feeling how another person is feeling and imagining what it would be like to be in that position. Introducing this trait to your children from kindergarten all the way up to high school really allows them to stop, take a moment, and think about their classroom community and their impact on the world. Yesterday afternoon, I read Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson to my class, and the idea that your actions just ripple out into the world was so powerful for my students to think that they're not in bubbles, they are part of this ecosystem, they're a part of this world, and their actions and thinking about how another person feels is a huge piece of that. So always thinking about empathy and reflecting on what we're doing and how we're doing it. The reality is that when you're learning something new, whether it's cooking or taking a new art class or learning how to form your letters or thinking about algebra, or all of these skills require an initial step in the door. And optimism is what gets you in the door. Optimism is the idea that you feel hopeful that risks are worth taking and that problems will work themselves out. And once you're in the door and you're thinking optimistically, then you kind of need some things in your tool belt to really help you keep going. The first is persistence. And persistence, we really think, is linked to this idea of grit, which is just the sticking with something, the coming back, getting at it again and again. After that, persisting alone, as I can tell you based on some of my cooking disasters, doesn't necessarily work. If I don't refine the recipe, then I'm just going to make the same terrible stir fry over and over again. So flexibility is this idea that you can try different possibilities and you can try different actions within a task. And Art Costa, who has done a lot of work on habits of mind, sees this as thinking about and seeing a problem from different levels, from the top down, from really close in, from far away. How do you see a problem, and then how do you solve this? And then resilience is the idea that you bounce back and you recover from your setbacks, because there will be problems and you will fail and you will have to recover from setbacks. The same is true if you're learning the alphabet, or you're working through your first chapter book, or you're trying to cook a stir fry, which I still seem to not master. But anyway, all of these are really important traits that we need for our classroom communities today, but maybe even more importantly, for our world tomorrow. So then the question's this. We have these big ideas, and it's really tempting to go in at the beginning of the school year and just plop these big ideas on your class and to say, everybody be optimistic. Done. Everybody be flexible. Everybody be resilient. But if you don't take the time to introduce these concepts carefully and really build your students' understanding, then they'll be fleeting, and they won't be really ingrained in your students, and their mindsets for learning will stay at the exact same place they were a week ago. So Isabel Beck has done a lot of research on vocabulary and concepts, and having students really, instead of being taught a vocabulary concept or an idea, introduce it. And so we like to say that you begin with an inquiry, and you name, you pick a book, and then it could be a video also, or a song, and then you find this thing that's in this book, and then you define it. So in my class a couple weeks ago, we read the book The Most Magnificent Thing, which is phenomenal, and we noticed that the character did some different things every time to try and make the most magnificent thing. And then at the end, we named this the idea of flexibility. And so you're thinking about this problem from a lot of different angles. So once you've named the concept, and you don't want to do 5 at once, 1 at a time, then you reinforce it. And that's really when you start to notice the change in the ecosystem of your classroom. And that's really where you go from a classroom that is maybe filled with students who are a little wary to a classroom that's filled with students who embrace risk and who try and are brave and support each other. It takes time. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding. And just as I mentioned at the beginning of when I came in, these pro-social skills really can affect children for the rest of their lives, and they can be taught. Just like self-control and self-regulation, all of these skills tie together and can be taught. We like to think of them as a constellation, or think of them as a tool belt full of all of these skills that when things get tricky or things become a little uncomfortable, our students and even ourselves as teachers can reach to our toolbox and find something that will help us as we move forward. So as Kristi mentioned briefly, there are 4 essential ways that we've found that we can reinforce these skills and stances. And the first way that we reinforce these once they've been introduced and once we've named them and found examples in the community is through self-talk. So we all do self-talk, and I, before working on this book, was completely guilty of having some very negative self-talk neural pathways. Philippa Perry talks a lot about how the more you think something, the more a neural pathway is physically ingrained in your brain, and then all of a sudden they become highways. And so I would have neural pathways like, I'm not really good at social situations, or I get really nervous when I'm going on long trips, or things like this that I have then reinforced over and over and over again in my brain. And so the solution is just to reroute these neural pathways. And we do that through self-talk. you start, especially with young children, by doing this self-talk out loud. And once you start talking to yourself, this becomes thinking to yourself. And then, all of a sudden, we internalize this, and the language that's around us in our classrooms and in our community becomes internalized, and we're able to tackle bigger problems. A couple really interesting things about self-talk is that we've actually read studies where they have talked about using your name in self-talk and how that removes yourself just a little bit from feeling so intimately engrossed in the problem that you're talking to yourself more like a friend and less like a critic. There's a Kobe Bryant anecdote about that I won't dare to retell because I can't remember it, but apparently he said something along the lines of, Kobe Bryant is going to Miami. You can look it up. So here are two different charts that Kristi has made as I get back on track about tips for self-talk. And just like anything we teach, we really need to be really explicit about how we are teaching these things and how there are steps. I like to think of Jen Saravallo's work about a strategy and a skill have steps within it. It's not just like, oh, use self-talk, do it, just do it. They're actually steps. And so I recently have been thinking that we start with saying your name, taking a deep breath, thinking something, saying it to yourself, and then reinforcing it. So the next really powerful way that we can reinforce these skills is storytelling. And storytelling is how we learned. In every culture, there's an element of storytelling. And again, these neural pathways become deeper and more well-rooted when we tell stories over and over again. Storytelling can be a huge part of our classroom culture, and so each morning or after lunch, you can gather your class together in small groups or as a whole class and tell stories of persistence and tell stories of risk and tell stories of optimism and really get your students to start ingraining these stories as a narrative of who they are. If you think about narratives of yourself, then there might be something really simple, like you hear something scary in the middle of the night and you start this narrative about somebody, well, this is getting creepy, somebody who's doing something. Or you could reroute the narrative entirely. If I have a narrative about how I'm not a very good artist, then I'm going to keep that going in my brain until I retell a story about how this one time when I was working with watercolors, I gave something another shot. So these stories become really the culture of our classroom, and the way you do that is you use direct quotations from real life things that happen with your students. You tell them just like we write true stories or personal narratives with bit-by-bit action, and you really work on showing, not telling. It's another great way to really reinforce all of the good work that we do in our narrative work and in our literacy work as well. And it will completely transform the culture of your classroom into a space where these stories and these ideas and these experiences then become the fabric of who you are as a group. The next way that we've found we can really affect change in children's mindset for learning is through goal setting. And this morning, at 7:30 in the morning, drinking my coffee, reading over my John Hattie, I was really struck by the top 3 most powerful or most influential elements of teaching. So he has a huge list of 138 effects, and they're the effect sizes of specific things. And here are the top 3. First, it's student expectations of themselves. And so how a student thinks they're going to do on something really affects how they actually do on it. And so he says that if we can push our learners just a tiny bit past their expectations and prove to them that they can do a little bit better, then they will do a little bit better, and then they'll gain confidence. This ties directly to all of this mindset work that we've really been doing. The second most powerful effect is Piagetian programs. And that sounds fancy, but really all it means is that the second most powerful thing for learning is for teachers to really understand child development and to really understand where your students are, what they need, and what's going to make them successful. And Kristi spoke a lot to that in the first half of this keynote, and talking about how powerful it is to really think that we are teaching children. And what does that mean? And what does it look like for a 7-year-old at 3:30 on the third week of school to be able to be engaged in a reading workshop, or to be engaged in a writing workshop? Or what does that look like, and how can we remember child development in all aspects of our teaching? And then the third most powerful effect was RTI, or response to intervention, which is now related to MTSS, or multi-tier system of supports, but really I think is driven by differentiated instruction and specific goal setting based on children. And so in our work on goal setting with children, this is an opportunity for a teacher to sit side by side with a child and to think, how are they going to really grow as a learner? How are they not only going to grow the academic and the content side of their learning, but also how are they going to grow in their metacognition and thinking about themselves as learners and as being independent agents of their own growth and change? When we're sitting down side by side with one student, just as all of the wonderful conferring work that's come before us has shown, we're thinking about zones of proximal development and Vygotsky. We're thinking about differentiating to what exactly that student needs and what they think they need. And we also think about how small steps lead to big change. And without targeting those tiny steps, we're not going to see the change over time in our learners. So goals can be about learning new strategies for decoding complex words, but it could also be about when you run into a wall and you can't write anymore, what are some ways that you can get over that and you can persevere through that, or you can persist, or you can be flexible in your thinking. We think a lot about the work of Daniel Pink in motivation. In his work Drive, he wrote about the importance of mastery, so the idea that students understand that they're getting better at something, which ties right back to that John Hattie work on student expectations. The idea of autonomy, that they have choice and they feel in control and that they're agents of their own learning, and that they have purpose, that they're not filling in a worksheet because it's a Monday morning at 8 a.m. and we need to just do something, but their learning actually has purpose in the world at large. When I was talking about grit, there's this idea that grit combined with passion is really powerful. Grit combined with creativity is really powerful. There's actually been a study that for high schoolers, they will remain motivated longer if they can see some purpose and some passion in their work, and if they see it tied to their community and their world at large. The same is true for a kindergarten student. If you can't answer why are we doing this with an answer that feels both good for you and for them, then you should ask yourself again, why are we doing this? So goal setting is a very powerful and concrete way to really see change and growth in your students. One moment, please. I can also take a breath. Whoops. So one really concrete way to do that is this. Goal setting sheets are very helpful, where you can say, today I'm trying, and in this case it was empathy. Here are a few times that I did it. Today I am trying flexibility in solving math problems in multiple ways. Here are the numbers of times I did it across the week. Reflection is really what drives growth. Without reflection, then you won't notice that you're actually growing and changing. So if I'm trying something new and I don't pause to say, hey, that went better this time, then I might just keep trudging forward, and the next time I run into this experience or this challenge, then I won't necessarily have the reflective capability to say what I should do differently or what I should repeat. But reflection is also an opportunity for us to come together as a class community. In our other ways of reinforcing this mindset for learning. We really depend on small group and individual conferring and working as a class with storytelling. But there's something really special about coming together as a class to reflect on how everything is going in your class community. And it really brings us back to our rallying cry, where we think, what are we doing in our classrooms to make them the world that we want for tomorrow? Reflection is an opportunity to come together as a whole class and to say, hey, this thing happened, let's make sense of it. This amazing thing happened, and let's make sense of it and learn from it. Or this really sad or terrible or challenging thing happened, and let's make sense of it. So we model our reflection the same way that grand conversations have been modeled for years in literacy. The whole class comes together and sits in a large circle and has a long and honest conversation about how something went, and then hopefully, just as they do in a read aloud or with a big idea, is that you grow new knowledge or you grow a new idea. And for some classes, that might be that persistence alone isn't enough, so what else do we need? What do we do next? And that cycles you right back into introducing a new stance or a new habit. But reflection is one of those moments where, as a teacher, you get to sit back and take stock in how it's going for your class and to think, how else can I change this community to really reflect what I would like it to reflect? How else can these students support each other? How else can they empower each other? And how else can I empower them? So now, as we end this amazing day of learning on a beautiful, at least in Vermont, sunny Saturday, Kristi and I just wanted to take a moment to express our gratitude. And we wanted to thank you for joining us here this afternoon, for joining our call to arms, for believing in what's possible for our children and our world, and for working towards it every single day, even when it is hard, and even when it is heartbreaking, and even when you feel like you're at the end of your rope. But on Monday, as you return to your classrooms, hopefully inspired and hopefully energized and hopefully well rested, please know that we are all standing with you. And we are all in your classrooms, and we are all standing side by side to build better classrooms today and a better world for tomorrow. Thanks.